Power Active, an initiative started by You Are Sportswear to empower women to find their own active adventure. I'm your host, Jacalyn Gross. Today, we're excited to speak with Mel Fernandes, a leading force in outdoor advocacy for survivors of violent crimes, marginalized communities, and much more, all areas that have become increasingly critical to the climbing and outdoor community. In addition to her advocacy work, Mel is a dedicated pet rescuer, showcasing her deep compassion for both animals and people. She believes that we are all meant to thrive outdoors, and her approach to an active, purposeful lifestyle is truly inspiring. We're excited to share her wisdom and offer insights that resonate with anyone who lives for adventure and the outdoors. Welcome, Mel. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying kind things about me.
Yes, you're welcome.
The work we're doing in the community. I appreciate that.
And I should mention that this is also Cher.
Yes,
from Clueless. Yes. I want to start at the very beginning. We always do. Like, how did you become active? And kind of it's a little bit different definition for you. You know, it's more of a lifestyle. So, like, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, well, I'm a big advocate for believing that life isn't just about like work or capitalism, and we really are beings that belong outside. So I wasn't raised on any sort of ideal that you weren't outside doing things, right? We always, as a family, had a very active lifestyle, one could say. My parents were very active, and I actually come from a long line of alpine climbers.
Oh, okay.
So I have like famous climbers in my family.
Really?
We've been in the Seattle area long enough. So,
yeah.
Jim Whitaker is like a distant cousin of one of my relatives, and back then, I don't know, maybe like 200, 100 years ago, there's wasn't a lot of people alpine climbing like there is now.
Yeah.
So I can trace a lot of my family history into being outdoors or doing particular types of alpine sports, like skiing, for example.
Yeah. So what would you say like your top active things are? Like, you said skiing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say gardening. Begging myself to mow my own lawn.
Yeah.
is like one of the things I should be doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm primarily a skier these days. I tend to work outside.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've combined being active with the need to produce income. So I'm outside. Yeah. Either ski instructing, working for a ski resort, or let's see, what are some other things that I've been doing outside? So some of my outdoor activism is income producing. So I'm outside working, just doing primarily search and rescue work.
Yeah.
And then I'm still a rock climber, and maybe in terms of I go to gyms on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Or, like, I'm a special guest sometimes at like affinity space groups.
Yes, exactly. So for you, when you are outside, it's because we talked before this about like kind of what we wanted to discuss, and you were saying like it's more of like your lifestyle than necessarily like something that you have like goals around, or you're trying to hit some kind of like PR, and like I can only relate it to running pretty much because I do a lot of running. but like you think of it more of like a lifestyle choice.
I think of it more in terms of the rebellion that each of us can choose to engage in, and as far as like trying to scoff normal society around performance and like existing to do things rather than just existing to being. So kind of ceremoniously, I kind of like climbed my last alpine goal in 2020. Okay. And then by 2021, I no longer went outside for recreational purposes, but only was working outside. For a long time, all I did, if I was outside in the mountains, I was working in a community advocacy space. Yeah. Now, that also wasn't as sustainable and was almost like made me as prone to burnout as someone who is just trying to run to hit a distance goal, or who is trying to climb just to hit hard climbing goals. So now I have a balance where like I'm outside with the people I love, doing things hopefully in a way that like I can keep up with them. Gosh, what's been happening lately is that everyone's coming around to me to help them achieve their goals. So like I have a bunch of friends who want to climb Baker this year, and some friends who want to do like Rainier and some other mountains, and they're all looking at me like I'm supposed to take them, and I have not been keeping up with like cardio or any sort of like heavy lifting, so I have to now train. Which is hilarious. As someone who like didn't want to train and like didn't want to work on any goals. It's like, well, I have to do something. But I don't know. I went hiking this weekend for my birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Which, by the way, thank you for celebrating with me. And I think I was hiking at like 1,000 feet an hour, which is like perfect if you're gonna do something outside.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So skiing mostly, and then if you're not like working towards specific goals, like how do you stay like motivated to kind of go outside and like prioritize that in your life?
Yeah. I try to think of the things that I'm good at that I enjoy doing, and being outside and doing activities that require some sort of uphill travel were something that I was naturally gifted at as a kid. I also, like some of your other guests, grew up out of the like Cascade Crags, Summit Everett community. So like shout out Brenna. And I remember going there as like a elementary school student. I think I was in middle school the first time we went climbing there as a school. So like I realized pretty early on in my life that I could hike. So search and rescue was kind of the first thing that I did. Yeah. Where I was like, okay, well, I am motivated to help other people. Yeah. What am I good at? Right. Yeah. And we can talk more about this, but part of it is that I was raised by a social worker, and my parents are both very politically active. So I had as a young person was instilled in motivations around community and service. So when I decided to pick what I was good at, a lot of it was climbing based. Yeah. So the motivations are hopefully always about helping other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I talk to people like you and to people like Crystal, and I'm just like, I need to do more. Like, it's definitely, you do so much and you put yourself out there so much. Like, kind of going into that, like, that can get really heavy. Those are a lot of heavy things that, like, you're now kind of associating with outdoors. Like, how do you manage that? Do you have like a bad taste in your mouth sometimes to go outside?
Sure. Yeah. And I hear what you're saying about like, but that's also, that is so Bell Hooks is an author I'm very passionate about at work, and she talks about the imperialist, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist patriarchy. And it's a long term for just that system we function under that makes us want to do things that we don't actually necessarily want to do or need to do. Yeah. So I understand the need to feel like you need to do more. Yeah. But only do what is happy and healthy for you. Yeah. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're like overextending yourself. I realized I was in that place in 2021 because I actually was like severely injured through the end of a couple missing hiker search projects and needed double foot surgery and had to be out in a wheelchair.
Oh my gosh.
From pushing myself. I just had bone spurs. My body kind of erupts in extra bone growth. Yeah. When it's stressed, and I had stressed myself out too much, where I was like physically limited and like physically traumatized essentially from the work that I was doing. Yeah. So I've had to structure my work so that it is long-term and beneficial to myself. Yes. Things that actually like bring me a lot of joy. Yeah. A lot of fire. Naturally, like I think you do what you can, what you're good at, right? And I think this podcast is an excellent example of you're bringing women's stories to the forefront in a way that like not everyone could. Like I have a hard time sitting in front of a computer. Yeah. Like, period. Yeah. Like, I can't. Yeah, I can do. I was working really hard recently on getting a 3-hour screen time on my cell phone. Yeah. It's so hard to do. Yeah. And then when you're creating things electronically, you're in front of screens all the time. Exactly. So I think you're doing great things. Yeah. And you just have to do what you're good at. Yeah. I tended to find myself, for a number of reasons, just working in like outdoor rescue, first responder work, trauma-informed care, because they were things I could do over and over and over, and not necessarily feel discouraged in like a productivity way. Right. I think there's a lot of things to feel discouraged about. It's a fun time for us to do this podcast. Yeah. Because yesterday was all those protests. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Exactly. But it's also Aries season, and I'm an Aries. And if you're familiar with like astrology, which I'm not necessarily a huge believer in, but I understand that there are parts of me that are comfortable with conflict and enjoy them from a long-term perspective. Yeah. As far as like a reflection of me and how I'm changing over time. In a community that might not necessarily enjoy change or want change to be a part of itself. Yeah.
I know. I definitely am not a conflict person. My sister is a lawyer, and she was the conflict person and could stand up for us. Yeah. And so I was the youngest, and so I have the very much a youngest mentality. Yeah.
Do you know that meme on TikTok where it's like the T-Pain song and sister duos do it, where it's like, talk to me, and it's like the little sister, and then the big sister like comes out from behind,
yeah,
and
exactly,
like, talk back.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Actually, so I have a younger sister.
Yeah.
Same dynamic.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get along great.
Yeah, right?
Yes,
if
definitely.
there's anyone who says anything to you at the gas station, that's always what I like tell my like sweet friends who don't want any conflict.
Yeah.
Like if you're at a restaurant or like somebody on the road does something to you, like you tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll talk back. I will respond.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess like going back to that like burnout question, like you're saying like, okay, I can handle like certain like people being more aggressive to me or whatever, but like I know you can't talk about things in specifics, like we kind of covered that together when we were doing our introductory call, but like is there anything that you're like working on right now that you can discuss, like as an example, that is happening in the outdoor advocacy realm?
Sure. There's always so many things happening.
Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of it is getting tied in with broader political movements.
Yeah.
So something very recently that I've been talking about online is there's an interesting perspective I have within women's advocacy. Because I advocate for survivors of violent crime in outdoor spaces. Mm-hmm. That looks a lot like search and rescue for missing or murdered hikers, but sometimes it means advocating for a woman who was sexually assaulted in an outdoor space, either because she was working or she was on a trip where somebody intentionally did something to her that was harmful. And that's women's advocacy. Yeah. However, there are a number of folks who will, for example, like there was some talk about the Women's March. Mm-hmm. Women's March is an organization that was primarily more involved in like 2016, and maybe it's making a resurgence now. I've taken some training with them. They're awesome. Yeah. But that's an organization that people who maybe don't have pure intentions in their women's advocacy will gravitate towards and say like, oh, come to this Women's March protest. Meanwhile, they have someone in their lives who is harming women in my community. Yeah. So we see women who are like very obviously politically motivated to resist, the Donald Trump presidency, but in their own personal lives, I am having to come to them and say like, hey, the person you're having at your climb nights is like thrice reported to police for sexual violence and is like banned from certain organizations. So, like, why are you bringing them to events? Yeah. I have some personal experience with that because when I first started going to climb nights in the Seattle area, went to one that was being hosted by a person who had a reported history of mistreating women. Yeah. And it's not like people don't know. Yeah. They know. Yeah. They know. And even in our own interactions with people, we feel certain ways about certain types of individuals where they may not be safe. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't stop them from doing things like trying to advocate for women publicly. Yeah. Sometimes I would speculate just to get more types of vulnerable people in front of them. Yeah. But also in just like the negligence that we have as individuals where we don't want to hold our own friends accountable. Mm-hmm. And so I'm finding myself questioning, like in particular, like, because the pendulum I think is about to swing politically where like for 4 years under Joe Biden, I talked to a lot of people who were not interested in engaging with victim advocacy. Yeah. They were like, oh, well, these things are happening and when women are fine. Yeah. Now we've got a new president and everyone's upset and they want to do things. However, the work needs to be consistently performed, regardless of who is the president on my end. So I'm in this place where it's like, well, do I go back and talk to the people who didn't believe survivors in their own community, came to me and said, oh, that girl, she might have just, she's mistaken. And then they turn around and want to advocate on a larger scale for things that they think are more important. But I guess what I'm trying to... Do you understand where I'm trying to get at? Yeah. When it comes down to, like, actual change, like, we all have to make changes in our own lives that reflect our values. Yeah. And we're at a really interesting, pivotal place where, like, all of a sudden my work may become very commercially successful again. Right? Yeah. And I may find myself with more donations or more attention on me, but do I let that impact what my day-to-day looks like?
Right. Yeah. I do get what you're saying, and I people do need to be consistently believe women and, support advocacy. Dependent, doesn't matter what president we have. It's stressful as we are, or stressed out as we are right now.
Well, and we should be, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of horrible things that have happened. I, in particular, last year was tracking the defunding of victim services.
Yeah.
As a state, Washington lost a lot of the money that helps fund either law centers that do cheap or discounted legal work.
Yeah.
Or resource centers that work with victims. And
Yeah.
we saw those institutions already defunded under the last president. So
yeah.
it's not like it's going to get better under this president.
No.
Right? And I want to be, you want to encourage and empower all women, right?
Yeah.
And so some of them may need to be educated on why they can't just look the other way when men in their own lives are doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting place to be in.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I don't have any solutions, but I definitely see what you're saying and coming from. I guess, again, going back to these like heavier like topics and relating that to like the outdoor space, like I know you're kind of telling me some things and I don't want to like bring it up unless you do, but like, does knowing all these things like make you less likely to want to go outside and be in an outdoor space?
Yeah, let's just say I do far less like solo hiking and camping.
Yeah.
Than I used to.
Yeah.
A lot less car camping than I used to. But that's just like knowing the statistics around how women are harmed, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot about knowing crimes of opportunity happen when there's opportunity.
Yeah.
No, I don't feel like I think what we're discussing is like the disenfranchised feelings you may have when you believe in a cause, but don't see the change that's needed to consistently motivate yourself to do the work. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like an ongoing balance of like understanding what is realistic about what's happening in the world versus like what you're capable of fixing. Yeah. Something we talked about that, has all of a sudden become a big question mark as to whether it's legal is that I've done advocacy work for Palestinians in Palestine. Yeah. And that's really exhausting, stressful work. Yeah. Emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially. And I understand that one person doing it isn't going to change everything, but that doesn't mean you don't do it.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Right? It's all about, like, what do you think? I don't know. I have also had the benefit of a number of years going by where I can then mentor other outdoor activists. Yeah. And I always say, like, work when your cup is full. Yeah. Don't work when your cup isn't full. Yeah. When there's, like, an old Bible verse about cups overflowing or something. Yeah. Jewish, so I don't know it very well. Yeah. I think it's New Testament. Yeah. But that idea that, like, if there's not, like, a lot of passion coming out of you, mm-hmm. sometimes doing work out of like a place of not underabundance, but just doing work if your heart's not fully in it, or you don't fully feel secure or healthy or happy, can be just as harmful to you or other people. Yeah. Right?
What would your recommendation, other than camp with people? What's your recommendation for women that are trying to stay safe outside?
Yeah, because I still have tons of friends around me who are going outside. Yeah, and what are some really great best practices you can do to always make sure that if something happens, there's resources. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of telling people where you're going ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Always checking in. Primarily, if you live with another person, I think that's the first person who needs to know what your plans. Yeah. Where is your car going to be? Yeah. When are you going to be back at that car? Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just a big fan of satellite communication. Mm-hmm. I know iPhones are doing it now, where you can communicate with emergency services. I do still carry one of those big fat orange inReaches, so that I have a lot of communication ability. But as far as if we're talking about getting lost, right there's a lot of technology that you can rely on to not get lost. If we're talking about trying to avoid becoming the victim of a crime outside, these are this gets wrapped up into crime victim advocacy as a general industry perspective, which I can talk a little bit about, since I know it's kind of a new topic for people who are outdoors. But the primary way people nowadays, and a modern take on this is like, the primary way you make crime go down is by offering social services to humans so that their human rights and human needs are being fulfilled. And unfortunately, because we live in a world where that's not the case, if someone is lacking something, they may find themselves outdoors in a remote location where they think that the accountability process may not happen if they do something wrong. So the fact that there is, not ample cell reception, or not a lot of witnesses or places that can conceal bad things happening, a lot of like illegal or like not great things happen outside, right? And you can only be as aware as you can be. I travel alone. I spend a lot of time by myself, and so I just know, like, unfortunately, when humans see me from across the way, they see a smaller human, a woman who they may be able to harm. I don't let that hold me back from doing things outside or going places, but it is, unfortunately, unless we're helping people have education as children, or like having strong bonds with their parents, making sure that their parents can actually, instead of going to work all the time, like spend time with their children. So until we get there, for example, like a lot of the cases I work where there's like someone who's creating a lot of sexual violence in the community, you look at that person's background and you just see that that was not a person who had a lot of the things one needs to be happy growing up. Absolutely. And until we and this is just a community-wide, statewide government, humanity thing we need to change about us. And that's how we get crime to go down. It's very leftist progressive of me. That is what I believe. And so as far as like avoiding it, we did a series of trainings last year with King County Sexual Assault Resource Center called Bystander Intervention Training. And it's primarily like anti-harassment training, where if you see something inappropriate happening between humans, you learn to say like, hey, how you intervene. And oh gosh, where was I going with that?
What to do, like
how to
prevent it.
So you learn what to say or what to do in situations where, like, maybe you're at a campsite and there's this guy and he won't leave the tents with women alone. So you may decide to approach him with another man and say like, hey, those women are not interested in your company. Please leave them alone. Right, that's a pretty good example of, like, I might get a complaint from somebody on the PCT who wants to report that they had that kind of experience where somebody was, like, stalking them down the PCT. And these are great techniques that CaseArc teaches so that people can reduce harm in between humans in very real-world ways. But a lot of the questions I get around that are like, well, what if you're by yourself? What if it's just one person with you and that person decides to do something kind of unthinkable? And it's like, well, you have to survive. Like, you have to do what you got to do to get out of those situations. And let's hope that when you get back into cell service that somebody believes you. And that's been a huge part of my work, is trying to train organizations who are either employing people to go outside or who are facilitating groups of people going outside to believe women when they come back, and not to some good examples are like telling them like, hey, if you talk about this, we will remove you from our program. Or, that didn't happen the way you thought it would. We talked to him, he said it didn't happen, right? So offering that kind of anti-harassment training has been another part of the programming that I've been able to give the community. Great results. We're seeing across the board great results with it. Most people, I do believe, want to do the right thing when they have the education and the resources. And like, how hard is it, especially as someone who doesn't mind conflict, to just be like, hey, buddy, like, step off. Exactly. Step off. These can be really easy interactions that organizations want to get good at. So something I can talk about right now is that I'm part of a working group for Outward Bound, which does outdoor education in Canada. They looked at their incident reports because any good outdoor organization is keeping track of risk. We think about climbing accidents or river rafting accidents, but you don't necessarily think about incidences involving harmful behavior. So they looked at that data, decided there was enough of a need that they could bring in some sort of training or resource. And so I've been helping them develop what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's great when you're seeing organizations do it themselves rather than somebody on the internet calling them out if they need to do it.
Yes.
Which that's a service I provide.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I guess like too, like you're right. People mostly want to do good things. I mean, as companies, and if you're able to like show what good behavior looks like, then maybe they will change their actions. Definitely have been in some like questionable situations like that when I, not necessarily like for the outdoor space, but like in work situations that like definitely were not taken seriously. And so I'm glad that there's like some good reception that's happening with that. And I like that is, I don't know, it just is like nice to think about as far as like, okay, the change is good and it is happening it's slow, but it's happening and that's great. I guess like I definitely am going to start thinking twice about long runs in the woods by myself, but it is a real risk. And like, not just, I mean, definitely things can all happen. Like you could also fall down and hurt your leg and be out there by yourself too. Yeah. So there's other things that can happen. You just owe
it to yourself to, take care of yourself and see what you can prevent. Something I wanted to circle back to that you just said is, workplace harassment is a much more commercially acceptable form of like sexual violence that we think about and we work to prevent. And it is just a natural, I think, conclusion of that idea that we do it for outdoor organizations who are also employing. But there's a survey that I want to mention called the Safe Outside Survey. Have you heard of it? The American Alpine Club helped facilitate it a number of years ago, and it studied harassment behaviors and how often they're reported within rock climbing. Yeah. And the statistics came back that like almost 1 in 2 women who took the survey had reportedly endured one of those harmful behaviors. And men too. Men were, I think 16%, which may be higher than workplace averages. So it is, there's a lot of discussion in the industry about whether that is concerning, because if there's something inherently dangerous about climbing like that. They say climbing is inherently dangerous. Is it particularly involved in gender-based violence or intimate partner violence? And I don't necessarily think so, beyond it may provide a more sheltered environment for those things to happen. Outside of a workplace. Something fun that I did last year to help supplement income was that I bartended. I got my bartending license. And, sexual harassment is like a normal part of being a bartender. It's just, and you learn something that I experienced, my personal experience as someone who has done it, like, I think I've climbed maybe like 200 or 300 mountains and been a part of like dozens of organizations. If I decide that somebody's bothering me and I say something, like I feel social pressure that I'm misbehaving. Like, I'm not being nice, or I'm not being polite, or there's something wrong about what I did, rather than the guy that like touched me or like said something to me that was stupid. I didn't like it. Versus at the bar, you can just say whatever you want. My manager was like, if there's cameras, just do this so they can't see what you said. Tell them to fuck off. I started trying to unionize the waitresses and the bartenders about like, we're gonna report every time we see this one dude in janitorial doing something weird. we're not gonna stand for this. Exactly. Because these behaviors are very just I think industry by industry. I don't think there's necessarily anything about outdoor sports that makes it inherently more risky, but when you look at something like bartending or adult entertainment, I've done some work with like sex workers and things where they also experience sexual violence. And just across the board, I like to joke that like wherever there's a man. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of people come to me and they're like, I didn't know that kind of stuff happened outside. And you're like, well, where is it going to happen if we're standing against it as workplaces and as women's groups? They're going to go to where there's not structure and not resources. And what I found when I first started the work was that we had a number of organizations either employing or facilitating instruction by individuals who didn't have background checks run or who weren't criminally vetted. And that naturally meant that people who can't pass background checks were going to work there.
Yeah.
And they were going to maybe tell their friends that they found on that website where you figure out who in your community is a certain type of criminal, right? You can find out who online is like a really dangerous kind of person, and they may know other people in the area. So. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah. But I have seen a lot of good changes around criminal vetting, reporting, education. Yeah. And I think that's kind of why I was recommended to talk to you on the podcast, is because these things affect women. Yes. Like, this is women's advocacy. This is actually what it looks like. Yeah. And there's a joke I have amongst my friends when we see those like women's empowerment documentaries or films where it's just like girls just being like so cute. Yeah. Like, it's hard to be a woman. And then they never say why. Yeah. There's no explanation of like, I had to try really hard in my industry to be taken seriously. Yeah. Yeah. And there's no explanation of like, well, actually, like you were subjected to like a lot of sexual harassment, or like your boss didn't believe you were a competent employee. Right. Yeah. I hear lots of chatter from different parts of the outdoor industries where like mountain guides don't feel like if they're women that their male bosses are taking them seriously. Yeah. Right. Other forms of discrimination. And so it's my work has been about like primarily how and why do we change these things. Yeah. I like when you're talking about this, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this happen in the gym all the time when there's two people climbing together and one of them is a man and one of them's a woman, and they're like, oh, we won't let you down the wall until you try harder, or like all of those things. And like commonly that those people do get weeded out if you're at a good gym where they're just like, you don't talk to people that way, or they're only hanging out with the female climbers and they're, always around them. And then slowly they realize as they like, I usually see those women and I'm like telling them like, oh, good job. We're becoming friends and things like that. And that's when those guys like kind of get out of there. So, right. When you show up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, yes, I've seen this so many times happen and not even like realizing that's what I'm looking at, even as a woman who has. Yeah, why do you think that is? Why do we not? Because part of the Safe Outside survey is they asked respondents first, like, hey, have you ever been sexually harassed? Yeah. And some people were like, no. Yeah. And then they listed out sexual harassment. What that behavior looks like. Yep. Non-consensual touching, catcalling, inappropriate sexual jokes, like a number of, all the way down to sexual assault. Yeah. And then the numbers went up immediately. Yeah. I kind of question, like, why do people tolerate, like, why are we tolerating it? Yeah. Just because we're outside or we're in, like, a climbing situation. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's just like, it might be that thing where you just don't want to confront the, like, because even when I'm standing up or trying to like weave my way into like that situation where I'm like, okay, this guy is weird and we just need to like separate. I'm not saying that out loud. And I think that does need to be discussed because like what do they know that what is happening? Like the women that are like, and oftentimes it is younger women, of course. So like, do they realize that that's what's happening? I'm seeing the signs of it being weird, but like, do they realize? And I think you're right. I think it's just like people don't know what is like considered sexual harassment in that situation. Yeah, I'll give you a real world example. Yeah. I don't always see sexual harassment as a victim advocate and professional. I won't necessarily see it more than I'm hearing about it. Mm-hmm. But I saw it once. I saw it not too long ago. Yeah. Excuse me. I got offered to do a ice climbing trip on Mount Baker. Mm-hmm. I was super stoked because it was going to be me and a friend that I'd met online, and then a guide who ended up being a younger woman. Mm-hmm. And we pulled up on our campsite that day. Yeah. And there was only one other group up there on a guided trip. Whole base camp to ourselves minus one other group. Yeah. And I watched over the span of 2 days, I think, start to finish. The person ended up leaving. Yeah. After I told them to leave. Yeah. But I watched that somebody in that other group, another fellow mountain guide that knew my guide, harass my guide, say really inappropriate things, act very like hostilely and in an unwelcoming way. Yeah. And I rarely get the opportunity to like do intervention like on my own in front of other women. Yeah. And so I part of me was like, oh, this person thinks that they're going to get away with this behavior.
Yeah.
But they don't know that the wrong person is here.
Yeah.
Right? Like the person who was in charge of me was like a kind, young, educated, well-spoken person.
Yeah.
Part of what I understand about the guiding industry in our community is that it's very seniority-based. Mm-hmm. This other guide had a lot of experience and was like well known as an advocate in the community.
Yeah.
So I watched a number of interactions that I thought were inappropriate.
Yeah.
I have a lot of HR and managerial experience. We haven't really talked about what I'm classically trained in.
Yeah.
But I actually have like a ton of business experience.
Yeah.
And so, just like a manager at like any sort of team, I kind of sat back and watched for a few times. And then I started to give some feedback, when the person was entering our campsite. Yeah. Because our camps are on opposite ends of the camp. And this person was coming really close to our camp to like, say things about, they didn't like how my guide was teaching us. On the first night, they didn't like that we stayed out too late. Yeah. We were like, stayed out too late to climb the ice? Like, we came back when we wanted to be done. You're not in charge of us. You're a guide. So I was saying those kinds of things. And then I think I counted to 10. Like I watched on the 10th time that person came in. Yeah. And I kind of just gave the body language of like, go away. Yeah. And they looked at me and they said, are we good? And I said, no, you need to leave. Yeah. Like, leave us alone. You're mistreating my guide. You're making me uncomfortable. Like, leave us alone. Yeah. And they didn't like that. They were very explosive. But they did end up leaving, I think, really quickly the next day. Like, the feedback had been delivered that was not an appropriate way. At one point, they, like, pulled my guide aside and had a very loud conversation about who she was having sex with. Because they knew each other, and so this person thought that this one guy was having a sexual relationship with my guy and she wanted to know. But I'm like right there as the client. Yeah. Like, and I'm waiting for her to cook me my mac and cheese for dinner. Yeah. Right? Like I'm waiting for the lighter to boil the water. So, and from the span of like 1 to 2 interactions where I was very calm, cool, and collected to the 9th and 10th where I was just like, go away. Yeah. Leave us alone. And I, in talking to the people who watched those interactions and then the person who was kind of at the center of the harm. Yeah. They didn't know what to do or like how to handle it. Right. But ultimately, like we just needed to have physical distance. Yeah. There's not really anything one could do in those moments. Yeah. I wasn't going to sit that person down and be like, this is why you don't talk about somebody's love life in front of when they're at work. Yeah. Can you imagine going to like a waitress and trying to get her like who her boyfriend is out of them? That's weird. Yeah. Great example. Yeah. And that would happen to me at the bar, right? They'd be like, you have a boyfriend? And I'd be like, yeah, I have 12. Yeah. Do you want to be my 13th boyfriend? Like having so much fun. Yeah. And I felt like the freedom to be, for some reason in climbing or in like mountaineering, you're just taught to be humble. And I was reading an article recently. There's an author named Kat Tenbarge. Do you know of them? They're a reporter. Okay. They used to work for Business Insider and they just went independent. So shout out Spitfire News. She did a piece related to Title IX and anti-sexual harassment training for colleges. But part of what she went and explored in the article is actually when you become a victim of violence, you tend to, there is a trend for folks who are subjected to gender violence to react by conforming more to gender norms. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really helpful research that she cited and explains a lot of things. There's a lot of examples that I could cite, but this is going to be very internet of me, but are you familiar with J.K. Rowling and all the antics she gets up to on the internet?
Not all of her antics, but I know some things, not all.
She purports to be a proponent of anti-trans legislation.
Okay, yes, I do know that.
Yes, everyone I think is familiar. She's made a lot of noise about how she's very trans. What does she say? I want to represent what she thinks her beliefs are. And I want to tie it back. She thinks that people who are born men are inherently violent and they shouldn't be in places where women are. Okay. Yeah. So she thinks that a trans person isn't a real. So if it's a trans woman, it's still a man. She doesn't acknowledge that that's a legitimate idea, gender transition. And so she doesn't believe that men should have access to women in like changing rooms and gyms. Yeah. part of how she justifies that belief is that she is a victim of sexual violence.
Yeah.
I think repeated sexual violence. And what some research is suggesting is if you report what happened to you and you are not given fair treatment, you're not supported and believed and given therapeutic resources to move forward, you then believe it's just on you and your gender. And that's the way things are. You kind of maybe give up on that idea and become less resistant to the patriarchal norms of those around you. Which was huge for me. I work with a lot of victims, and I wear my beliefs on my sleeve. Primarily because I have a hard time being in situations where I can't represent myself and what I believe in, but also as a defense mechanism. So I don't work with somebody who has really harmful beliefs about women. Because they can take my work and make it look like it's something it's not. Right.
Wow. I know. I want to sit with that one a little bit more because I was like, that is wild that's like the statistic, but I was really triggered, or not triggered, but like I was really activated when I heard that, you know, the thing about trans women is like, it's determining like what makes you a woman, like you know what I mean, like woman? Exactly the question, like what is a woman?
So that's a Matt Walsh thing. Do you know who that is? He made a there's a talking head who made a documentary called What is a Woman? He runs around lost. I don't know.
Exactly, but it's like also then they're going to determine if you're a woman or not, or like check you before you go into different bathrooms, you know, to make sure you have the right genitalia.
Hardware.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
It working right?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, and that's not going to turn into sexual harassment in any way.
Right. They're not going to be looking at children that way. Or I have a little fun with this online because I personally don't do a lot of things as a woman that other women do. Right now, actually, I can share with the listeners at home that we are trying to get me to menstruate again. Which is not something I naturally do. So I have, you know, occasionally I work with all sorts of people in all sorts of places, particularly when I'm out doing search and rescue work. We work with a lot of people who live in the mountains and don't have a lot of education. So, you know, what counts as a woman? Oh, she can have a kid. It's like, well, what if she can't have a kid? You know, what about these really particular, remember the Olympian?
Yes, the 800 runner?
Yeah, and she like was a woman, had always been a woman. But something within her genetics was weird. Yes,
I was just reading something about her.
I forget her name. You'll have to put it in.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
But I don't have access to that same kind of genetic testing. So how would I know if I was like that or not? And if you don't know that, then how do you define who is a woman?
Exactly.
Like, well, what if she looks like a woman, has everything, and does everything? But her genetics have one little marker that means she's not a woman. And it's just brain rot in my opinion. Transvestigating is the term for it. It's nonsense. These are people who need to get hobbies. You know, touch grass is like a real thing. I want those folks to do.
Are you, so like on your menstruation, like that you're working on, is it over exercise or anything like that? Like no, it just wasn't something that was like naturally happening for you?
No, it's not been naturally happening. And part of that is birth control. And so we're, and part of that is that we think I might have endometriosis. So I've been having like a lot of pain for no reason.
Sorry.
Also, I'm in like a loving, healthy relationship with someone who wants to have children. And so finding that out sooner than later, if I can't have children, is really important. But to your point, like a lot of like running, exercise science has to do with what time of the month you're on. And if you're not menstruating, I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go outside and run and see if I like it. If I don't like it, I can't blame it on my cycle.
It's very
just
true.
Didn't feel like running today. So we'll see how that goes.
Definitely. And that's okay too. If you don't feel like it, that's great.
Gotta do what feels good. You know, it's not always running for me. I have something I'm very privileged to have is access to urban trails where I live. So I can go run whenever I want. Just gotta be a little wet this time of year.
Exactly.
Where do you like to run?
I like to go, lately I've been doing like the Mukilteo, like the Big Gulch or Japanese Gulch trails. And then Lord Hill. But because I'm still trying to come back from, I had my appendix rupture last summer and it's been taking me a while to get back to it. But I've still been doing trails, just not as much as I would like to be running now. Because I like to just go out and go adventure for a while and then come back.
Yeah, and come back. I love Lord Hill. Did you ever run around Woodby Island?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, like Fort Eby. Fantastic area for running.
Yeah.
As someone who doesn't like to do a lot of running, I think there's like a 50K out there. But there's all sorts of trails and beautiful scenery. And if you're familiar with Muckletoe, it's just across the way.
Yeah. No, I definitely should check that out. And I do want to do a race, like a longer race, maybe in the fall. But I'm giving myself permission. Like, it doesn't have to be a 50K. It can be a 25K. It can be whatever, just trying to like get another race, and like feel, just get one under my belt. So I feel like confident going into some larger races, and like back into my goals and stuff like that too. These have been definitely some like heavier topics that, we are happening in the outdoors and like we unfortunately have to talk about because it's happening. Like it's not like we're, enjoying this happening. It's just like calling it out. And like you said, like comparing it to like workplace, like things like that is, I go to a workplace sexual harassment, whatever training like every year, but we don't talk about this as outdoor space. So I think as like making this more evident and like more of an option, I guess, for people is like huge. And I personally will be more, I feel like I'm going to be more of an advocate because of this too. I've been thinking like I might just like say things out loud because unfortunately it's happened to me in workplaces where it like nobody has said anything, or they've said like, oh, if you're just a little nicer to this person, then they'll treat you better. Like, so it's kind of those things that, but that's why I have to sit with that too, that you said like, oh, well, people are siding with their gender, like that thing that, what's J.K. Rowling said, like I want to sit with that a little bit because I'm like, okay, I have to be the person that, be the change you want to see in the world. Exactly.
Yeah, it really is just about making small changes about how we interact with each other.
Yeah. And I do know, like, the gyms that I go to, I'm very familiar with all of the staff there. If something were to happen, I know they would be supportive of, like...
The gyms have come a long way.
I've heard friends from other communities that have all had similar things happen in them. And other sports. So, it's definitely not climbing or
not just
hiking or
we think about it because it's so remote and so rural, but there's that kind of stuff everywhere. I heard I guess the swing dancing community has like done a lot of this work where they have really great networks of support for people who say like I was dancing and something happened to me, or, like I went home with somebody afterwards and something happened to me. So that's been really reassuring. There is some crossover too where we may... So let's say there is an example of somebody who is held accountable legally or in a community aspect for something that they did that was violent or sexually inappropriate towards a vulnerable person. We may see them sport jump, meaning they may go to another sport or another community where they don't necessarily expect that info to follow them. So I do occasionally get pulled in. Somebody will message me and be like, hey, so-and-so just started running. They're not skiing anymore. They're running. And we need to tell this new run club like that these things were reported to the police prior and that this hit the scene and was well documented and established, because they do the wrong types of people are really good at what they do as far as finding new opportunities. And it is something that other sports are aware of.
That's really important, and not even something that I even considered.
Right? But they'll move. There are certain Facebook groups that you may be aware of where women can come forward and talk about like dating experiences they've had.
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's some Facebook groups. They might like call themselves predator networks or like, dating groups, and somebody will pop on before they go on a date with somebody and be like, hey, do you know this person? Like, has anyone had a good experience with that person? And occasionally I will be tagged in like other states groups or other communities groups. They'll be like, somebody get Mel. I'll show up and I'll be like, oh my God, they moved. Like, oh
no.
I would,
Yeah.
you know, if you're going to go out with this person, just be aware, like,
Yeah.
this is something that we dealt with in Seattle.
Yeah.
As a younger Mel, is that I went climbing on El Dorado Peak once with a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And he got very, very upset, and he ditched me and the crew with the glacier rope on the glacier. And so I had to self-rescue off of Eldo without the rope that I'd climbed up on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was something that kind of informed my work. Is like, I realized after I broke up with that person that they had been very abusive to me in like emotional ways. And it wasn't until they put my life in jeopardy that way that I was like, oh, this is a bad person to be with. And it was more that, like, in those vulnerable moments, he realized that he could, like, really say something by being like, because he left me the camp site that we were in the night before. Yeah. Like, I had to friggin' pack up the tent.
Yeah. After you were able to rescue yourself down.
Well, no, so he took off from camp. Yeah. We had, like, a fight, and he took off from camp down the mountain. Yeah. I've got all of our stuff, but not the rope. And I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Yeah. And I talked about that online at the time. I was not a victim advocate. Yeah. I talked about that online, and a lot of people came forward and said, like, yeah, that's happened to me. Or, like, people had been on, like, avalanche rescue. There was somebody who had been on an avalanche rescue course in a guided facilitated class, and they'd left her behind. Like, they'd gone out into avalanche terrain and then ditched out quicker than she could keep up, and she just hiked out by herself in avalanche terrain. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. And it's more that, like, you're in, like, an unsafe situation, right? And there's some people who, like, will take advantage of that. Yeah. Or won't be decent human beings about it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a crazy... I've gone back and climbed El Dorado Peak and felt very comfortable on it. Good. Yeah. Yeah, it was an easy... It was funny, too, because like, that boyfriend told me that, like, I wasn't a good enough climber to climb the mountain that day. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to be tied in with you. Like, you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. And, like, I looked back on that experience, and, like, I had more classroom training than he did. Yeah. Like, I'd actually taken a class and some courses. And he was just, like, really tired and cranky that day. Yeah. And I wasn't. You know, I was, like, good to go. Yeah. I think that's something I realized about how I saw myself as a woman. Yeah. Is that, like, I could let him tell him those things to me. Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily fight against them, even if I knew that they weren't true. Right. When in, like, actuality, I probably had way more training than anyone else we went out with that day. Yeah. And so when I went back to Eldo, I card it. Like, we went up and down in the day, because it was like, whatever, I'm just going to get this out of the way and like, have a really good experience. Yes. Yeah. You took it back. Yeah. I, like, kind of, like, reclaimed it in my heart. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I don't need some dude to take me on this mountain that that was such a disaster of a trip. It was really funny. Yeah. I look back at how my life and my career went after that, and it was a very valuable experience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's one thing too. It's like you not realizing that you're in that sort of relationship until you're getting out of it, and then you're hearing what he was saying, and that's kind of like when you're in it, because you're not pushing back. You're accepting what that person is saying to you as the truth, even though you know it's not real. Yeah. And, you know, my friends, you know, didn't do anything that, like, changed the situation, but something they did that was very helpful is, like, they would listen to me talk about our arguments or what we were doing out in the mountains, and they would tell me, like, hey, Mel, like, I had a really good friend be like, you don't really want to do that, do you? Yeah. So this guy, he was, like, my main climbing partner and romantic partner, but he made me carry a 3-person tent. Because he didn't want to be in a 2-person tent with me. So I guess I'm gross, you know. He doesn't want to sleep next to me. Yeah. But this was a long time ago. And I did that to accommodate him. Yeah. But I remember my friends being like, why wouldn't he just carry the tent if he has that problem? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, why wouldn't he do... In like... You know, I'm pretty strong, but, like, I don't really want to carry all this stuff. Yeah. I didn't really want to do that. And I had friends that would just be like, yeah, Mel, I don't really like the way he's treating you. Are you all right with that? I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm fine. Because he never did anything to me that, you know, he never hit me. Yeah. You know, I would have reacted in an equal way if that had happened. Back then, I was just the girl my parents raised me to be. I didn't have any formal, like, I wasn't trained in like intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
But I did learn some things in retrospect that I had, that really taught me to like identify those kinds of behaviors, because they do escalate. If he was going to leave me on a mountain on top of a crevasse without a rope, like what else was he going to do?
Yeah, I know.
Just like, what is wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know. But there's some things about climbing too that I also saw a therapist after that.
Yeah.
I was like, I never want to date a guy like that ever again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I dated him if he was that, mistreated me. And part of what she had to say about what the things I told her is like, she was like, why are you listening to other people tell you how to rock climb or mountain climb if you know all the things? And all I had to say to her was like, I guess I just let certain people who are like older or stronger than me tell me what to do.
Right.
And she was like, why do you, what does that say? Is that how you want to live your life?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to do? And I think that says a lot about how women are socialized to just kind of accept the things that they've learned through repeated behaviors. Yeah. It's not like, I don't know, my mom's wonderful, but she wasn't a rock climber growing up. A climber. She's fun. She had like a lot of outdoor experiences as a kid that she was like, I don't want to make my kids go through that. Yeah. So like, she let me go out on my own, and she wouldn't have been able to explain to me the power dynamics. Yeah. In like swapping leads on a trad. Climb the way I found out that I needed to like be in situations where everyone around me treated me well. Yeah. It's very interesting to be like, oh yeah, I'm dating a guy I don't like because he doesn't treat me well, and I don't, our friends aren't necessarily helping me identify that that's going on too. Right? Yeah. But, there were some ones that said things here and there that I look back and think, oh, that was the right thing to do. Yeah. So if you're ever in those situations, some of the best things you can say are like, I love you and I want somebody to treat you better. Yes. Rather than like, leave him and never talk to him again. Right. Yeah. They won't necessarily realize it at the time.
And then they won't come to you if they need help.
Right. If there's something that really goes wrong and they might feel embarrassed or ashamed. Then, it's, it's a tricky situation and a larger conversation that comes up in things like bystander training. Right. Like, well, what do you know? What if it's your friend and your friend's not in a fun relationship? And I think climbing is like a great stressor for that kind of thing. Yeah. Like, if you're in a relationship that's tough, going out in the mountains makes it like infinitely tougher. Yes. Exactly. Like, infinitely more stressful when you're like trying to navigate like risky situations. Yeah. So it's funny how that worked.
Yeah, especially with that whole power dynamic and your life on the line. I mean, and it's not just climbing. There's other spaces. If your life is in danger and you have to deal with this person, like, how do you have to get out of it eventually, you know what I mean? But how is that a safe way to do it and exit that situation too? It's like, it gets really complicated when that kind of danger is, right there.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I wish there was, people ask me all the time for like vetting resources. Like, how can you tell somebody's going to do something rash and irresponsible outside before you go outside with them? And there's really nothing I can really say that will protect people from anything bad happening to them at the hands of another person. We talked about that earlier. Yeah. I wish it were that simple. I wish everyone, got the help they needed in their life so that they didn't behave in ways that were so violent or disruptive. But the reality is that you may find yourself in a situation with someone who's like scary and like not safe to be around. And part of it is like really getting to know them before you go out into the mountains with them, or go out on a long bike ride with them. Yeah. A pack rafting trip with them. Yeah. And there, there's some things that I definitely screen for. And it always reminds me of dating too, when you're like getting to know a new guy. And you're like, how do you feel about your mother? No, just kidding. Before we go on this expedition, before we climb Mount Rainier, how do you feel about your mom? But, there are things that I look out for. If people are, if people tell me that like, oh, a certain girl is crazy. Yeah. Or, of course. They say like misogynistic things, or they got weird things to say about different political issues. Yeah. It's like, I can't go out with you because I don't trust you. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what you're going to do with my life. Yeah. And that's kind of a hyper vigilant way to do it. Right. But that comes from me just being very sensitive to having a number of experiences outdoors that are really stressful or traumatic. Or, doing work that is stressful and traumatic, right? It's like, when I'm outside, like, I want to be just in good vibes. Yes. I just want to be like enjoying the fact that I'm alive and outside.
Yeah, and outside. Yeah, exactly.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
And instead, there are days where I get out and I'm like, I gotta do this for 2 hours, or I got this going on at work, and I'm really, this coworker is going to do something that's going to annoy me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I try to remind myself, no, I'm just out there to like have a good time, do the right thing for the community, learn something as a person, grow as a person, maybe get stronger legs.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, let's have something positive. Like, we always ask this question at near the end of the podcast, but what words of empowerment would you give other women in the space? Like, it can be either like consistency or being outside or being active, like whatever you feel.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind for me is just say no.
Yeah.
Say no.
Yeah.
Don't do it if you don't want to do it, or don't say yes to things that don't fill your cup. Or I've been reflecting a lot on my career and like staying in jobs too long, or like staying in situations that weren't going to help me in the long run. I talked to you about bartending, and I left that one particular job really quickly, and I was really proud of myself for like start to finish 3 months. I was like, nope, that wasn't the right place for me to work. And I think if there's anything I've learned in my long, almost 34 years, is that like sometimes you like tell yourself that you like couldn't do something or weren't worthy of it, and really you were letting somebody else's insecurities impact whether you were good at something. And there's a particular job that stands out in my mind that I like stayed at way too long, just because I didn't think the grass was greener. But they weren't like, they didn't believe in me. They didn't think I could grow in that role. So I stayed in that job way too long and like missed out on some like career momentum that would have helped me in the future had I like said no and like found something that, even if it made me uncomfortable, as long as my bills were being paid, I should have just left, right? And I shouldn't have waited so long. So yeah, that's I don't know if that's like a super active outdoorsy concept right now, but just in general, I say I'm gonna be saying no. I think a lot. Like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound fun. Or like, I just don't want to do it.
I think
saying no.
It's a good like giving yourself permission to do that. Like, even if it's not active, like I think is a huge thing, because we always want to be like, oh, we gotta challenge ourselves. We gotta push through. Like no, sometimes you just, if you don't want to, you only live once. Do what you want to do.
Don't be doing things for other people. Also related to women's safety. Like, say no. If you find yourself in a situation where you're uncomfortable. Like, if you, something I always think is like, am I going to feel bad if I say no, and why? Like, why do I feel bad saying no? What about me feels that I need to sacrifice a little bit of my energy that day to that thing? Or like, what are they going to think of me if I say no? And then I just think like, oh, is it because I'm like surrounded by a bunch of assholes? Like if I say no and they freak out, like that one situation on Mount Baker, like it just tells you all you need. Like, you absolutely do not need to be there. And should say no to those things. But also like we're learning a lot as a human species about respecting each other's boundaries and about consent. So my theme is very negative today. Say no. I have a big there was an artist for a while, and she worked the word no into her art. That I was into for a while. So I don't remember who it is, but big black glittery letters. No.
I love it.
It's a very Aries thing to say, actually. It's just like, no.
No.
We're not doing that.
Yes. I always like to have to I have to validate all my me personally. I have to validate everything, and it's just like, no, I don't need to. If I don't want to, it's fine. Like, that's a fine answer. I don't want to.
No, it's everything's an investment. Everything is an investment, and it's like, what do you want to get out of this? Is it worth it? And I always reflect too. Like, sometimes I do wonder what people think of me, and I wonder, because I am just as socialized as any woman to be nice and for people to want to like me. And I'm like, what's the risk to people thinking I'm not nice? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to me if people think I'm not nice and then they run into me in person and I'm like wearing a wig and I'm like giggling about whatever I'm doing that I'm actually having fun at, right? It's like one of those things where I don't think you need to be a nice, kind, sweet, gentle person, particularly when you're doing change work. There's a lot of value in doing things because you're angry, and because you want things to change. So saying no is a part of that.
Yeah.
And I always, something I like to justify a little bit is you can also say no thank you.
Yeah.
Just no thank you. No thanks.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be like, I hate it here. No. But you can be like, no thanks. No thanks. We also do thanks, I hate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, these are great ways to say no.
Yeah.
With some sass and some flavor.
Yeah.
I think can really help you in the long term feel like you're respecting your own boundaries, but not just like kind of turning this idea that women who say no can be interpreted as like mean.
Yes.
You're like, well, I didn't say like no, screw you. I just said no, I don't want to go to your weird little thing.
Yeah.
Your weird little thing is not for me, and I said no, thank you.
I think that could be a t-shirt for sure. Especially if you know the meaning behind it.
Thanks, I hate it.
Yeah. Thanks, I hate it.
Thanks,
That also can be a t-shirt. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention or bring or talk about today?
Yeah, there's some pressing things I have that I want you guys to know about that are a little lighter.
Yeah.
Which is that it's kitten season.
Okay.
And so please spay and neuter cats.
Yes.
We've been exploring the dangers of unspayed animals recently. The current litter that I'm fostering at home is so cute. They're only 3-4 days old, but their mom came to us with her first set of kittens. So we were given, a shelter called us to foster. It was going to be 6 kittens and their mom. We took home 4 kittens and the mom was already pregnant. And I did not have the time capacity this year to do neonatal kittens because they are keeping them alive is difficult.
Yeah.
It's more than just the mom can handle at some points. And she had just had a litter.
Yeah.
But we ended up having her carry it a full term. Despite me really wanting a cat abortion.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, don't make her do this. Well, she had 11 kittens.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So I have little babies.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
Yes.
They're so cute. But please get your cats fixed. And please reach out to your local rescue if you ever see stray cats or cat colonies.
Yeah.
Something I'm really passionate about. It's environmental at this point. It's environmental advocacy to make sure that pets have homes and humans that are stewarding their care.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
I love cats. I love kittens. But it's important that we do these things for them so that they live happy lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the lighter side of my work, too.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I'll be talking about really heavy things, but I'll, have a pile of kittens in my lap. I'm like, hey, guys, it's no big deal. Yeah, I've got Monkey here.
Yes.
Hey, buddy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great. It's funny, I had a fairly difficult conversation once with an organization about one of their sponsored athletes.
Yeah.
But in the room with me was 4 5-week-old kittens.
Yeah.
And they were slamming doors and screaming and hitting the laptop.
Yeah.
I'm I'm really sorry because I know this topic is difficult.
Yeah.
But, there's kittens in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just lightens the mood.
Yeah, it does.
It's not that bad. It's not that serious. Guys.
Yes.
We can get anything done if there's kittens.
Yes, exactly. Going along with that, is there any plugs that you want to do?
Ooh. Yes. So I am in an interesting transition period with all of my advocacy projects where I do want to start downsizing things. One of those things is that I want to I want to focus primarily on something that I'm really good at, which is money.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about this, but I have a master's degree in finance.
Yeah.
I've become a certified financial advisor and held investment licenses in my life. I've run banking institutions and nonprofits.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
For-profit businesses. And so I'd like to apply some of that to victim service advocacy work. There's been a lot of defunding. So I run something called the Victim Assistance Fund. And I will plug the website for you so that if folks want to donate, they can.
Yeah.
Something I learned when I was getting into this kind of work is that there's not a lot of resources for people who are reporting violence outside.
Yeah.
But it was pretty simple and standard for me to accumulate some donations so that people who do report violence have access to mental health therapy, legal resources, or community resources. So I am going to restructure that fund moving forward. We funded it primarily with Taylor Swift concert tickets.
Yeah.
I was one of the lucky people to get tickets to the Eras tour.
Yeah.
And then I auctioned them off so that we could start the fund.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, depending on what I decide to do moving forward, career-wise and just with my time, I think we might work primarily on refilling that fund.
Yeah.
It's been, I think it's been a year since we launched, and so we're on the tail end of spending that money. So folks can go to the website. It'll be on Give Butter, which is a nonprofit fundraising platform. And they can donate to a certain number of projects that we're working on.
Yeah.
That actually do, I think, at the end of the day, bring the support that's needed to move forward from difficult things. Really, I don't use the term healing because I don't know if we ever really heal from the bad things that happen to us. It's a sad thought on such an empowering podcast. But what we do is we decide to move forward when we've gotten the resources and we've decided to move forward.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from feeling like you've done all you can to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
So, it means something different to every survivor, but some folks want to get legal justice. Some folks want to explore, I was talking about how, like, when that thing happened to me on Eldo, I just wanted to figure out why I was dating guys like that so I could never date them again.
Yes.
And therapy was not cheap. So having that kind of resource available to you, or just having kind of like, we do community events. Yeah. It's been a while since I held like a gym climbing night. Yeah. For folks, survivors of violent crime in the Alpine to get together. So that work can be funded through the VAF, the Victim Assistance Fund.
Yeah. That's great. And then they can find, like, people can find that on your Instagram, or where can they?
Let me give you the
URL. Okay.
Yeah, I have an old one, so I will re-update it. Okay. Because it's like Taylor Swift themed still.
Yeah. Sure. That's a great idea,
it's
though.
So me. Yeah. It's so me, but it doesn't need to be that way anymore. Yeah. And folks can come support the work we're doing on that's very much on the back end, right? Yeah. It's not the preventative care that we're already doing. It's already pretty well funded, but the back end one-on-one assistance for survivors is what I will plug with you today.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Great. And then, do you want anybody reaching out to you, or?
Oh yeah. Like, how do people find me?
Yeah.
Like, what do they want to know?
Yeah.
How to get a hold of me? Oh gosh. So you guys can find me. I'm the Dirtbagette on Instagram, and then ahighercalling PNW is the nonprofit I run. That's on Instagram. I primarily work through email. Okay. So ahighercalling@outlook.com. As I said earlier, like, my goal in life is to look at my cell phone less than 3 hours a day. Yeah. So just getting a hold of me, sending me a quick email when something's going on is a great way to do it.
Awesome. Yes. And I'll put all of that in our show notes. And for my plugs, you can follow me personally. That's at Jacalyn Gross, JACALYN GROSS. You can follow You Are Sportswear. That's the letter U, the letter R, Sportswear on all social platforms. You can check out any of our products at youaresportswear.com. If you're listening to this and you want to watch the video version, you can go to You Are Sportswear's YouTube channel and subscribe. Both the audio and video version of this podcast was produced by Jeremy Canaria and edited by me. Mel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jeremy.
This has been a great conversation.
Appreciate you guys hosting me, and thank you for getting through all those topics. I know they're heavy, but they're I'm sure folks will get a lot out of this.
Yes,
episode,
definitely.
Yeah, if they have questions, they can reach out to me via email.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.